Welcome, everybody, to Moment of Impact. And I am your host, Tasha Jenkins. And I just want to thank you guys for taking time for tuning in again for another episode. I would like to say that I have a whole lot prepared and a whole lot things to talk about, or something lined up. But I wanted to just kind of today say, hey, Shrew, I've had a pretty much a really trying week. And I'm just a little bit, glad to be here and just kind of talk about, hey, I made it through. I don't know about anybody else, but I made it through a very trying week. There has been a lot of things going on. I'm in the process of trying to prepare myself to take off on another mission out of country. And so, there's a lot of things and a lot of checklists to do. And I am a mother. I'm a woman, I hope that doesn't offend anybody, but I am a woman, and women, we tend to plan. That's what I want to say. Like I said, so I hope that doesn't offend anybody, because sometimes some people may have a difference of opinion, but we are planners. And so for me, I know that I have like a long list of things that I'm trying to get done, and a lot of things that I'm trying to take care of before I begin to take my flight out of country and stuff like that. So, and a lot of times, I've had a lot of sleepless nights this week, and, everything just doesn't go as planned, everything that you try to do. And even though I made like a long list and checking off my list, everything don't go as planned. And that's because everybody does not line up for what you're trying to do. So there's been a trying week, and a lot of times I'm just trying to sleep at night sometimes with a million things going on through my head. And so I am just excited to make it to this week and just coming to the end of another week. And I'm excited to be here with you guys and just sit here and have another talk, just another talk. And then because of my week has been so trying, that's why I don't have I guess there was so many things going on this week. I probably had like a million things running through my head. And of course, you have all those great topics you want to talk about and those great things you want to dive in. But of course, now that I sit down here and begin to just get here in this podcast, I realize that everything that I ever thought that I was going to just be so deep and so inspiring and so just in there for us to just talk about, they just kind of just went out of my head. So I was just going to say that I'm just going to rely on the Lord today to just kind of lead our discussion, because there are some things that, like I said, that I want to bring up and talk about, but I'm going to allow the Lord to lead, because I do want that Moment of Impact be one of those podcasts that isn't so scripted and kind of just so organized in a way, because when like I was saying, I'm one of those people who spends a lot of my time out and about and stuff like that. And it's always been in places where I don't know people and talk to strangers all the time. And those conversations are not scripted. So I want want Moment of Impact to kind of be like that. So I hope that you guys will appreciate that. I hope that you guys will enjoy the fact that we won't be trying to be so scripted in what we do, but just I would like it to be like that we're having a conversation as if you're in the room with me and we're just having a conversation. So let's just dive into some things that have kind of I've been thinking about and going through. Like I said before, I am preparing to go on to another medical mission. And so there's a lot of things to get done. Of course, I've had tons of shots and stuff like that, and getting things updated and trying to get things together for my family and stuff like that before I depart. And so I've been I've been a little bit stressed. And so not really wanting to have to deal with a lot of things and not having to things not going on the way. And sometimes I would say that I've gotten a little bit emotional and a little bit in tears on stuff, only because of frustration and stuff like that. And I would admit, like I said, as I'm going through this process of preparing to leave and prepare to get ready to go, I would say that I haven't always been at my best. I don't know about anybody else. I haven't been at my best. And sometimes, people who have encountered me during this week probably would have been like, not, all that giving me a whole lot of pat on the back and a whole lot of amens and things like that, because I could find myself being pretty short when things were not going my way. And I thank God sometimes, because in that process, I began to understand, like I said, going through that I had to sometimes repent. I don't know about anybody else, but, as a believer and as a Christian and stuff, walking with the Lord, we're not perfect humans. And sometimes we just miss the mark. And I would have to just kind of repent sometimes of just being upset or short or a little bit, aggressive in my conversation with people and stuff like that. So I thank God for his grace this week, and bringing me to the end of a week that I'm really looking forward to the end of this week. And as time rolls up, I'm just looking forward to getting my checklist checked off. But on top of that, like I said, there's been things going on that I have been noticing and stuff like that. I don't know about anybody else, but I just been noticing a lot of times that there is a lot of things going on around the world, and a lot of things happening around us. But the thing that I've been focusing more on has been kind of focusing on young people. I have a son who's actually in college, continuing on his graduate degree and stuff like that. And he's has graduated, and now going on for his doctorate. And I'm excited. We're excited for him and stuff like that. I'm also excited for the path that he's going on. He's began to get himself involved with youth and stuff like that, and mentoring youth, and actually working with some youth and stuff in the area where he's going to college and stuff with some local youth. And I'm excited, like I said, for his opportunity to kind of mentor back to some young people. He's not that much older than them now. He's basically, like I said, just an undergrad, but and now pursuing his doctorate. But he's having an opportunity to mentor young people. And so we've had a lot of conversations and different times about how do you go about doing, or just things that just encourage him to just, be open and just allow himself to share and be able to talk to young people about how he got to where he's at, and how he got to the steps he's at, and how he made the decisions that he had. And because of that, our conversations has led me to just kind of focus on young people myself, because I have, in my career in different times like that, I have worked around a lot of young people and stuff like that. And I've worked in the school system and things like that. And so having done that, I've encountered a lot of times working in the school system, talking to a lot of young people, and I've been with elementary, and I found out that, me, like I said, working in the school system with elementary, that's not my thing. I need to be able to talk to some young people who can understand, and we can talk and have a conversation and stuff. So I give blessings to everybody who works with those elementary school kids. But that's not me. I'm just one of those ones that need to be able to talk to some young people, maybe middle school and high school and up. But what I learned, like I said, in my encounters with the youth today, even more so today, because it's been some years since I've worked in the school system, but is that the youth have a lot that they are dealing with. There's a lot that the young people are facing. And I think that there's a lot that the young people are facing that is even greater than what we have faced when we were young. I know when I was a kid, like I said, growing up in high school and stuff, of course, like that, in elementary school and middle school and stuff like that, you have your own challenges, different generations and stuff like that. You have your own challenges going on. Of course, you think that everything is going to be just come to end. You just feel like your whole life is kind of falling apart. You feel like you're trying to figure everything out. But I remember being young at a point of being a teenager and hitting middle school and getting puberty and all of those kind of things. I remember when you're just trying to figure out life, and you're just trying to figure out, what is it you're going to do? What are you going to be? Who you are? Who are your friends? And you're starting to understand like the boy-girl relationships. You're starting to understand like who I like and how I want to look and what groups you want to hang around with, whether you want to play sports, you don't want to play sports. It's like so many things that young people are combating with and stuff that even I combated with when I was young. And so I would say that when I was growing up, we didn't have internet, we didn't have internet. We didn't have social media. We didn't have, we didn't have, all of these different outlets and stuff like that sometimes where we could get involved in that and having the pressures and stuff like that young people have today, dealing with those kind of other elements in their life. But we did have peer pressure. We did have we had our Instagram and our Facebook and social media was really notes. I don't know about anybody else. I don't know if anybody else can remember, but we used to write. I remember being in school where you could write a note, like I said, in one class, pass it to your friend and say, write me back into the next class. And I mean, by the time you got done in the day or how many periods you had or whatever, you had like a whole pages and pages of a conversation that you had. So to me, I guess it would be like kind of social media or even texting back and forth with each other and stuff like that. But even with that, sometimes there were pressures and there were things that we dealt with because, when you're growing up, you're trying to figure out who you are. You're trying to figure out, who you are, what you are. You're trying to, please your parents. You're trying to, understand life. You're trying to, there's a lot of things going on in the world and stuff like that. So even when my time period and stuff, even though we didn't have all those other influences, I remember a lot of times dealing with probably as much pressure and things like that as young people do. But I think today there's even more, pressure for our young people today. And so when I was thinking about my son, I was being excited about the fact that him being able to just pour back into some youth and stuff that, that he's working with. I think about, like I said, I have 4 children. They're all adults now, but also I have grandchildren too. But I just began to understand and my heart just began to reflect on what the youth are dealing with and battling with today, because there is a lot of influences out there and a lot of things that is pulling on their time, that's pulling on their attention and stuff. And there's a lot of influences out there. And then the other thing that I began to witness and just kind of pay attention to is that some of these parents that are out there are young, very young people. Some parents are very much younger than I was when I became a parent. And some of them are still trying to grow up and still trying to figure out their life. And while they're still trying to raise some young children out there. And so the thing is that I wanted to kind of talk to about is just our youth, our youth. For me, I loved working. I found out, in a sense, I kind of got into the school system by default, being, again, we're military, moved to a place, I'm a nurse and stuff like that, and moved to a place where out of country and stuff like that, it wasn't very easy to find a nursing job outside of the base. When you live in other countries and stuff, like there's different requirements for you to work there. So I ended up eventually getting a job working in the school system as a nurse. And so I began to work with a lot of youth. And the thing that I loved about working with these youth, because they were high schoolers and stuff like that, is that I was able to reflect sometimes of the times that I was in the age where, what I did, what I thought, the things that, I was going through as a young person. But what I found in that time was how stressed out some of the youth were at that time that I was working in the school system. I mean, they had so much things that they were dealing with. And of course, being a nurse, a lot of times you were privy to a lot of information and a lot of things that they would share. And I tried to be somebody as a listening ear. But what I understood is that found out is that so many of them were really stressed out at that age. And maybe I was too, I guess, like I said, but maybe in a different way, in a lot of ways, because a lot of times I was, growing up and stuff, I got stressed out because, like I said, you're trying to fit in, you're trying to hang out, you're trying to go out to the party, you're trying to, be cool with your friends and all of that kind of stuff. You're trying to navigate your parents telling you could do things and not do things. Our biggest hangout place was the skating rink on Friday or Saturday night, and things like that. But what the young people combat to today, I think that is far exceeds some of the things that that we kind of had to face. There's a lot more young people today being raised up in families where they're single parent homes. Some of them being raised up where they're actually not being raised by their parents at all. They're being raised by grandparents, and some are just not are basically not being with any family members. They're in the system. And I found that out a lot, like I said, working in the schools and stuff. There's a lot of kids that are in youth homes and youth groups and things like that. There's just a lot of things that is just kind of coming at our young today. And I really, really, really lift up any parent today that's raising the children in this era, in this time period, in this generation, because there's a lot of things that you got to deal with. Even when I was raising my children, we didn't always have cell phones were there, but they were coming online and things like that, but they weren't as popular and stuff like that. And of course, the cell phone basically was a phone. It really was a phone. I don't know what happened, but it was just a phone. And then it became a phone that could text. And then it became a phone that could send pictures. And then it became a phone that basically now today it's a mini computer in your kids' hands today. So even when you're trying to raise children today, there's a lot of influences out there that parents got to be aware of. You got to actually pay attention to, because there's a lot of things that are going to be pulling at youth today. And some of it, like I said, just kind of makes me think about, because a lot of times you can see and watch the news and pay attention to a lot of things, and you can actually see that a lot of young people are dealing with depression. They're dealing with a lot of mental illness. They're dealing with, extremely amount of peer pressure and stress and stuff like that, to the point that fitting in it's at a whole nother level. You know what I mean? Trying to fit in and trying to be like, social media is great and stuff there. Instagram, TikTok, and when you got young people that are all involved in those things like that, having likes and, people responding positively to what you say and what you post and everything is at a whole nother level. Of course, me, our social media was the note passing and stuff like that. And so you would be completely devastated if your note got in the hand. Like, say if you was passing a note around. I don't know about anybody else, but yeah, you would pass a note around to your friend about the boy you like, something that you thought about them or something like that. And you're conversating with your friend, you're back and forth, and don't let the teacher find you writing a note and passing a note and then decide to read it in front of the classroom and stuff like that. You would just be completely devastated. And I don't know about anybody else, but I've had that done to me, and it's completely humiliating, to have somebody read what you writing about Johnny that you like, or Richard or whatever and stuff like that. And then if he find out, and then you got to find out that he doesn't like you. You know what I mean? And so, I don't know about anybody else, but I'm sorry, but everybody that I liked when I was growing up didn't like me back. You know what I mean? And so sometimes that's crushing as a young person to know that you like somebody and you're thinking all of this stuff like that, and you find out they think you as your friend or whatever kind of thing. It's crushing, And so, and I remember those times, man, you just be like, I just want to just crawl up under something and just kind of disappear. I don't even know about anybody else, but that's happened to me. I would say a few times in my life that that has happened to me. Of course, I don't know, like I said, when you're young, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but you kind of reach for the stars. So of course you want the most popular guy. You thinking the everybody else like and things like that. And it's crushing when you think that, like I said, he doesn't like you back, so think about, like I said, that feeling when I was young and I was in high school or middle school when that was going on, how crushing that was. But a lot of times, like, everybody didn't always know about it. You know what I mean? Everybody didn't know about it. There'd be a few that would know about it. It didn't pass as fast through everybody having knowledge of what just happened as it can today. The internet has the ability to lightning speed humiliate you on a whole nother level. A whole nother level. And on top of that, people can actually use the internet to actually say so many things about you, make pictures and photos and, what do you call it? Cut pictures together and put them together. They're not there and all that kind of stuff together that really aren't true and stuff like that, and put it out there. And then it goes out to millions of people, And so so understanding that now, I just think about the pressures that young people deal with today. And as an adult and as a parent, as a grandparent, and even if you're not a parent yet, I wonder how many times any of us actually notice the pressures that our young people are dealing with. I mean, they are stressed to the max. I know that I grew up in school and we had dances, we had assemblies, we had a balance between education and, anything that was cultural or, anything that had to do with the arts and all of those kind of things. Now the schools have gotten to the point where they have done away with a lot of that. So a lot of those things, maybe somebody needs to talk to some of these school districts and superintendents, but I think you need to bring some of this back. I think you need to have some time in school where kids can actually just decompress. I mean, just have a pep rally, just have a time where a cultural event, have it a talent show or something like that, and allow young people to actually decompress today. But today it just seems like it's all about the education. It's all about the standardized testing. It's all about test scores and everything like that. And young people really don't have times to just blow off steam. And when I grew up, we actually had that. We had lunchtime where you hung out with your friends and everything like that. We had Fridays where it would be for football games and stuff like that. You had pep rallies, and a lot of times the schedule would be shortened because it would be like an assembly schedule or whatever. And we would just kind of just be able to be kids. But today, kids can't be kids. And to me, what I think about that really breaks my heart today to know that there are young people today that are not young. They're not young kids anymore. They're thinking about whether or not they're going to go to school and come back from school safely, because we have all of these things going on where there's school shootings and there's all kind of things, violence happening in the school. They're thinking about whether or not, at very young, if you're playing sports today, parents and stuff like that, the level and the competitiveness in sports now have gotten to a whole nother level. Literally kids are being recruited for college level sports as young as in their middle school, and some are even being looked at as in elementary school, already being considered as a potential recruit that young. Parents are really just accelerating the growing up of kids today. And because of that, I think that young people are being sometimes overlooked. They're really being overlooked on what are the things that they're dealing with, because even though they may be dealing with and able to understand things at a whole nother level than us, mastering computers and being able to do all kind of stuff on the internet. I admit they're probably a lot further along in technology than any that I was at all at that age and things like that, and probably wasn't even thinking about those things today. But inside, they're still young children maturing, trying to figure out life. And I don't know about anybody else, but I don't know as an adult if we even notice. I don't know if we even notice, because so many times we get caught up in the fact that sometimes our young are maybe rebellious, or, they're being disrespectful, or they're, getting caught up in all kind of things. And then we get to the point where, and I have to admit that when I was young growing up, Miss So-and-so down the street say something that she saw you doing something and was going to go tell your parents, you was basically devastated. I think you would probably hop fences, run down the street, whatever you had to do as fast as you could to get to your house before Mrs. So-and-so came around the corner and told your parents what you was doing 2 streets over. So there was a level of understanding and stuff of adults and authority and stuff that we had in growing up, but that we can notice today that a lot of our young do not have. But however, I understand that has been something that has changed. But then I look at it and I'd say, well, is it the young people's fault or is the adults' fault? Who is the blame for the young not understanding the level of authority or understanding the respect of their elders or adults in their life? Is it the young or is it the adults that we've become? Because we have become so much, I think, in our lives, so busy. There isn't a lot of lives and a lot of families today. And of course, economically, we just can't, a lot of times it just is not affordable to have, a stay-at-home mom or a parent that can stay home and work. And a lot of times we live in the times now where 2-parent household, 2-income household, working parent household is needed today. But I also think that as adults, we have become detached from the young. I think we have have gotten to the point where we don't talk to them. We don't address them. We don't acknowledge them. We don't, raise them up in things that the right way in a lot of ways. Now, please don't, this is not a generality. This is not just saying generally, but I'm just saying, just speaking from just an observation. And a lot of times that, I do believe that we have gotten kind of like a chasm of separation from our young. There was a time that the community would be like, it was a community, and the community could actually speak to youth. You can yell from the window and tell them, hey, get out of the street, or all these kind of things and stuff like that. And hey, I'm gonna call your mama if you don't stop doing that, and all those kind of things. And we'll be like, yeah, Mrs. So-and-so, Mr. So-and-so, okay, yes, sir. And we'll, get ourselves straight. But now a lot of times, because we see the way that the young sometimes act and behave and some of the things that they do, we tend to turn our head or turn a deaf ear, or we begin to look the other way and feel like there's nothing going to be that we can say to them. And I think that our young people are out here struggling. I think they're struggling because there's not enough adults. There's not enough young adults out there today that are willing to sow back into the next generation, to begin to just speak to the next generation today, because we just kind of like, in a sense, are at a place in our lives where we're just like tossing them, and that's not everywhere. I know there's some places that people are doing great and remarkable things with our youth, but overall, I think that our young people are out here flailing, basically struggling to figure out life on their own. And of course, the internet and everything they can learn on the internet is feeding them everything that they think they know. Feeding them everything that's making them experts. But what I found when I was working in school nursing, it used to be so funny sometimes, because I would just, my office would be like kind of in the hallway, and I'd always have to keep my office open during lunchtime and stuff like that. And when everybody was at, lunch and walking the hallways and stuff like that. And of course, my office was right next to basically the student store where they would be selling candy and all that stuff. And I used to just sit at my desk and just laugh and just kind of just be blown away of the conversations that I would hear some of the young people say that they heard, like, my big sister taught me this, and my big sister said this, or on the internet it said this. And I mean, they literally, everything that they were learning and focusing on and beginning to guide their life by was by the things that they were discovering on the internet, or where someone who wasn't that much older than them was actually teaching them. But it wasn't an adult. It usually would be like an older sibling, a couple of years older, who actually learned something that they learned on the internet, and they actually would be passing it on to young people. And of course, they pass it on to the young people, And so I used to be really amazed of the conversations that you actually would hear. And so when I think about our young today, I wonder if we have forgotten to reach back, if we've forgotten to realize that even though they're growing up really fast and there's a lot of things that they know how to do that is far, far beyond what we knew how to do at that age, that they still need guidance, that they still need somebody that's with experience, somebody to speak into their lives. And I know that sometimes when I was encountering working with teachers and things like that, a lot of times teachers begin to be a little bit hesitant to say something or correct a young a youth or a student or something like that, because they would have to deal with a difficult parent, and or a parent that would get upset or say something, or they'd be like, I know you've seen it. I don't know about anybody else. And they'd be like, you threatened back in the day when I was, you threatened to call your parent. You'd be begging and pleading. No, please don't. But today they'd be like, take out their cell phone, call her. My mom wants you to call me anyway. Call her. Call her, put her on the phone. She wants to talk to you. She doesn't like you anyway. And so many teachers today just be like, forget it. It's not worth it. Because like I said, they feel like that they're going to end up in some serious encounter with the parent. But I still think that as a result, we have begun to be like, turn our head against the things we see youth doing. And we've turned our head against the things we see the youth struggling with. And then we just let them drown. We just let them try to figure these things out. There's so many things that young people are trying to figure out today that is heart-wrenching to me sometimes, because they're trying to figure it out on their own. And then we are just, and in some aspect, letting them, we're kind of letting them, because we're finding out, hey, it's just too much trouble. They don't want to listen to us and everything. Every generation has its own challenges and stuff like that. And the generation today is a lot of young people, out there a lot of times give this portrayal and this persona that they don't want to hear, from you. They don't want to listen to you. They don't. And I know that you encounter it. I know people encounter it. But the truth is that we have to remember how we were at that age. A lot of times we walked around big and bad, like we had it all figured out. But in some aspect, I know for me and myself, I don't know about anybody else, but I actually hoped I had somebody to talk to, somebody that I could really trust and ask questions that I had questions about, or things that I didn't understand, or things I couldn't figure out, and things like that. Because a lot of times I felt like I couldn't talk to my parents, and a lot of young people feel like they can't talk to their parents. But but when you're trying to figure out those things on your own, you're going to find the wrong answers in the wrong place. And you're going to get to the point where you're going to start going down a path. And I just think that when I think about our youth today, I think it's very important that we don't forget about them, and we don't get turned off by their attitudes, that we don't get turned off by what they're struggling with, that we don't get turned off by the decisions that they're making at a young age, because they're so influential now, that there's so many things out there that are influencing their life that we have to be aware of. We just can't turn a blind eye to what they're struggling with. We have to be able to address them. My children, who are adults now, like I said, used to kind of be mortified because they actually had the kind of mother that actually would be sitting in the stands. And I know, like I said, I don't want to be, mess up a young people's time where they trying to hang out and be cool and all of that kind of stuff. But when I would be sitting somewhere and I would hear somebody just continuously using, profanity and saying all kind of stuff like that, I could take it but for so long before I would literally turn around and actually address them, and I always tried to address them in a way of just kind of say, hey, I just don't think that you should be saying all that. And I think that if your mom or your parents or somebody like that heard you and stuff like that, they probably wouldn't be happy, and my children would probably wish they could just melt away, at that moment. But I just happened to be one of those people who actually always did that. And a lot of times when I would find outlets, of course, you would get some that would actually try to, rise up and try to be big and bad. And then, of course, I come from old school, you know what I mean? So I also come from old school that, it would only make me get a little bit more like boisterous in what I would say and correcting them and realizing that, hey, I don't think you want to go there. I don't think that that's what you want to do. And I found that like a lot of times that the young people, we don't think so. And it doesn't seem like it at the moment. But I do believe that a lot of times young people appreciate when you're willing to correct them, when you're willing to redirect them somewhere, because they're really out here on this path. And a lot of times, with no direction and really with no real guidance. And the only guidance they're getting is misguidance. And so I think that they appreciate and respect someone who'll be willing to actually challenge them while they're trying to challenge you. And I found that a lot of young people that I would encounter and stuff like that, because I've had some times where, those kind of conversations with people would be some difficult children. I'll be like, I just please, don't come in my office anymore. Don't. If you don't come in here no more, I'd be happy. But then, the Lord would just be for whatever reason, they would keep coming. And then eventually it gets to a point where we'll have our little, locking of horns kind of thing. And basically trying to let them know that, hey, you're not finna back me down. You're not these kind of things. And then a lot of times, eventually I would win their respect. I would get their respect, and then they would know that, Mrs. Jenkins, don't play. Mrs. Jenkins is somebody, if I see him in the hallway doing something they ain't supposed to do, I'll be like doing like this. I'll do my finger and call him here and come here, get in my office, close my office, and then have a conversation like, what are you doing? And I found that at times that a lot of these young people, they were learning how to respond that way because they didn't have anybody in their life that actually would correct them. Or they come from a household where they would see the display of just outward disrespect or loudness or cursing and all of that kind of stuff in their home. And they were learning that being taught, that's how they were being taught. That's how they were supposed to respond. But I think that we owe it to our youth, who are going to be the ones taking care of us as we get older, to begin to sow into their lives now, even when we feel like some of the youth are very, very difficult to reach, because there's so many of them out there that really, really, really desire those people in their lives. And so, today we just kind of wanted to kind of just talk about that because, I have adult children and it wasn't easy being a parent. It's not easy being a parent. And we went through our challenges and we went through our things and stuff like that. And I wasn't perfect. And a lot of times I made mistakes and stuff like that. And a lot of times my ability to work with other youth helped me understand sometimes my children. And but when it's your children, it seemed like it's a whole nother level of trying to reach them and work things out. And then when it's your children, you're probably a whole lot less patient and a whole lot less understanding when it becomes to your children. But my children have helped me learn, like I said, how to understand the struggles and the different stages and things in which they are going into their life and stuff like that. And now I have grandchildren who are going through those stages in their life. And I know that, like I said, when you start reaching a certain age, puberty and teenage and all this stuff like that, there's a whole lot of things going on in you. There's a whole lot of things going on in a young person at that time that, it's not just, their home life and things like that, but there's a lot of hormonal things that are going on. I mean, basically hormones are raging and everything in them is telling them to go wrong way. Everything in them is telling them to do this and do that. And they're trying to figure out whether or not they want to, look this way or dress that way or talk this way or act that way and stuff like that. Who are my friends? Who are not my friends? And things like that. So we have to understand that young people are being challenged every day that they leave your home or as you encounter them. And so, I just wanted to kind of just talk about that because that's where I think my heart is in a lot of ways, is trying to not just reach adults, not just touch people who don't know the Lord and things like that, but I want to actually touch the young me. The young me, the one that actually in the time period when I was in these stages in life where I see some of these young people that I wish somebody actually, a lot of times that I had somebody to talk to or somebody to speak to. I had parents and everything like that, but they were my parents, and a lot of times I can be honest and true that I learned how to do a lot of things, sometimes the wrong, sneaky way. Because like I said, you're trying to figure out life, and so I don't know about anybody else, but I didn't do everything right as a youth. And a lot of times that it would have been nice. I used to be, I wasn't the oldest in my family growing up, but I was raised the oldest. And I used to always wish I had somebody like an older sister or older somebody that I could talk to and things like that. But our youth today is that I just think that we need to be more aware of all the things that are pulling at them, because I noticed that today, even more so, you don't see kids outside playing today. You don't, like when we grew up, like I said, I know some people have probably seen that picture and things like that on social media and stuff like that. When you wanted to know where everybody was, you can actually see with all the bikes in the yard. You know what I mean? That really was our youth. That was really our growing up. And so you don't see that today. You don't see kids that want to be outside and riding their bikes or running, running in the street or playing games or kick. You don't see that today. They're in the house. They're on the computer. They're playing video games. Like that. I don't want to go outside. It's boring. It's hot. It's hot. What am I gonna do out there? What am I gonna do? No imagination when it comes to those kind of things and stuff like that, because they pretty much have everything. But so you don't see that. So you're not always going to be knowing what they're getting involved in and what's being fed. But what we do know is that if we don't invest in our youth, if we don't pay attention, even as, a Christian and a believer, if you don't pay attention to youth, let me just tell you who really is paying 100% attention to your youth. And that's Satan. And that's the enemy. He is really just bombarding them with everything he possibly can. He is not neglecting them. He's not turned off by their attitude. He's not, taking a blind eye or a deaf ear to anything. Man, he's like absorbing everything that they're giving out, and he's willing to meet their needs in any way he possibly can. And if we don't become the people that actually counter that and be able to put some positive influences in their life and speak into their life, he's going to get a hold of their life in a way that's going to lead them down a road that they're going to have to actually learn how to come out of or get over. And some of them are not going to survive the road they go down. And so I just think that we have to pay attention to our youth even more today, because they are the generation in which the enemy really wants to destroy. Because if he gets them, then he's destroying another generation that will not know the Lord. It will not actually accept the Lord in their life. And if we become turned off by the youth's response and their attitude and all of the things that they do to kind of push us away, we're basically, gift wrapping them for Satan. We're actually gift wrapping them for him. And so we need to pay attention to our youth today because Satan wants them. He wants them. I get excited, like I said, because, there's a lot, there's a bit of in between because there's a lot of youth going through a lot of things. They're dealing with a lot of stuff. It breaks my heart when I hear young people take their life. It breaks my heart when I see young people going through things where they're doing things that just will blow your mind away and just make you be like, what is going on and stuff like that. But then in the same aspect, you're seeing campuses and colleges just bursting at the seam of our college and young adults giving their lives to the Lord, even more so than some of the adults in their life are doing it. So, this is war that's going on between Satan and God for our youth, and it's a tug of war. And as we're walking through life and encountering these youth, instead of being like, that's not my child, nothing to say, be okay to address, be okay to say something. If you see a young person going down a wrong track and not being afraid, feel empowered by God to actually have that he will give you the right words to say to them that they actually will get their attention. Because I believe in a lot of times the acting out and the things that you see that they're dealing with is really them telling you they need guidance. They need to hear from somebody. And so we can't be so busy in our lives and so turned off by what we see and judgmental of our youth today, the way they dress, the way they act, the way they wear hair, the things that they're getting, the things they're exploring and all of that kind of stuff, that we won't actually reach across and actually close that chasm, that gap that's between us, and actually try to embrace our youth today and begin to pour into our youth. We need to sow into the next generation. And because if we don't sow into the next generation, the enemy is definitely sowing into them. And he's actually leading a lot of them down some deep, dark paths. And so I'm excited, in fact, to know that my son, one of my sons, is actually allowing himself to get back involved with the youth and working with youth groups and stuff like that, because he has a lot of things that he can actually share. And I know at different ages and stuff like that, some people, depending on what age they are, have that gift to be able to talk to young people. But I feel like I'm rambling a little bit. So, I understand that if this podcast is with you, but I just wanted to just get on here. Nothing deep, nothing, I guess too profound, but I just wanted to advocate for the fact that we need to pay attention to the youth today, because it's the youth that is actually drowning out here in life. And then when they start getting all of these things going on in their life and all of these struggles that they grow up to be very dysfunctional, adults, and they become dysfunctional adults, and then they don't know how to, they have no coping skills. They don't know how to deal with difficult things in their life, and they need that sense of mentorship, and they need that sense of people pouring into them, and they need that sense of people recognizing their struggle and their struggling. And it's great to parent them. It's great to correct them and all of that stuff. But then we also got to remember sometimes when we're parenting the youth today that they are dealing with a whole lot more things, challenges out there than probably we did in our age, and that we need to have some grace for them and be able to try to listen to them and afford them the liberty to talk and share their struggles. Because the things that they are facing today is coming through everything. It's coming through everything on TV. It's coming through the internet. It's coming through social media. It's coming through everything today. And it's basically pulling at them. And our kids are drowning in what they're being exposed to. And we are, a lot of times, are just basically putting blinders on and walking around and saying, hey, this let me just keep my kids. Let me keep my children together. I don't only have time for mine, but there's so many youth that don't even have parents or don't have folks in their life. And that's unfortunate, or have people that actually are positive influences in their life. And you may just be that one that actually could have to say something, actually get their attention and shift their life into a whole nother direction. Because just like this podcast is a moment of impact, and everything that we do, and every time we encounter youth and you see them doing things that would kind of make you just shake your head or be, disgusted about or whatever, just think about, like I said, what you might be able to say to them, or might be able to encounter them and actually say something that maybe they will listen. And I know sometimes it seems very difficult and it seems very hard, and sometimes we get afraid because we've seen some things that that youth do sometimes when people of authority or anybody in a position of authority may say something. But do understand that the internet and the TV and all of that stuff a lot of times likes to portray the worst. But I know for a fact that there's a lot of adults making great impacts in youth life today. And that there's a lot of times what the TV portrays and everything the news put on is always going to be news. But there are a lot of people that are actually doing some really great things in youth life today. And so the reason I wanted to just get on here and talk about that, because, youth is our future, and youth are the ones that are going to be taking care of us when we get over. And so what we sow into them is what we're going to reap back in our elder age when we get older. And so I just want to encourage anybody out there that has some youth that you're struggling with, that you're trying to figure out, how to address some things that maybe you're dealing with your young person, that your youth or your child or a student or anything. And I just want you to just reflect back on where you were at that age and the things that you were dealing with. Now, granted, you probably didn't have as much access to some of the things they do today, but just think about what it would have took for you to actually kind of listen to somebody saying something. Because we have to, like today, basically, we have to actually think about our words, and we have to think about the way that we say certain things to them in a way that actually will get their attention and maybe, correct them on the path that they're going on, but also basically be said in a way that they will receive it. Like I said, we know the saying that you catch more bees with honey. So, you just can't be just shouting at them and screaming at them and yelling at them and things like that. Sometimes you might just maybe just say, hey, I like that outfit, where you get that attention and stuff like that. And sometimes you may have to actually just kind of bluntly kind of correct them. But then in the same sense, when you're correcting, you want to also reinforce that with something positive. You want to be able to reinforce something like basically let them know what they did that you didn't like, or they did that you thought was inappropriate, but also basically tell them what you're proud of about them and what you think about what they're doing and how you see them. And because young people really, unlike what we think, in the way that they're pushing us off and the way that they're responding sometimes to our interventions in their life, they really are crying out for us to actually notice they drowning, to notice they're struggling, to notice that they're trying to figure it out. And a lot of times they're just afraid because, I come from a generation. A lot of times your parents said certain things to you that were kind of threatening. Like, I don't know, like if you do this, this is this A, B, and C, you're going to be kicked out of my house, A, B, and C, and, this and this is going to happen to you and all these kind of things like that. So a lot of times parents don't think about their words when they say things to their youth, because you're trying to do that scare tactic to them, that scared straight kind of mindset. But a lot of times youth, when they get themselves in trouble, when they get themselves caught in something, they will never forget the fact that you said that. And they will never forget that you told them that if they got pregnant, you were going to throw them in the street, if this, on all those things. So when those situations happen in their lives, they're not going to tell you. They're going to do everything they can to hide it from you because they're going to believe that you are really going to do those things you said, even though you may have learned that's what you're supposed to say to scare your kids straight. You don't realize a lot of times your children do not believe that you would actually have grace and compassion for them and be there for them. If they get themselves in one of the situations that they would consider one of the worst situations that their parent would basically be devastated about. So we have to be careful about our words. We have to be careful about the things that we say or things that we are repeating that we were learned when we were growing up, because every generation is different. And we have to be careful because our children never forget what we say. They never forget the things and how we said it. And they will believe us that when you said that you would do A, B, or C, if they did A, B, or C, then they are going to believe it and they're not going to inform you and they're not going to share with you what is going on in their life because of the fact of what you said you would do. So when it comes to our youth, I just wanted to say that I want to encourage every parent out there because it is difficult to be a parent today. And I want to encourage every young person today is that, forgive us for not paying attention to what you're struggling with. Forgive us for not really noticing the things that are literally combating against you at a level that you don't even know how to figure out. Forgive us for passing you by because we see a behavior in which we don't agree in, and then we don't want to say anything about it. Forgive us for not noticing that you're drowning. And know that I hope that whoever's listening to this episode of podcast, I hope that you will understand that there's a time now, it even more so than ever, for us to notice our youth and notice that they need our guidance. They need our input. They need us to notice them. They need us to speak into their lives. They need it. I don't care how much they push away. I don't care how difficult the challenge is happening with your child in your house today. I don't care how many times they slam in the door or sneaking out the window or getting caught up in everything. Do not give up the fight for our youth. Do not give up the fight for them because the enemy is fighting for him. And the moment we let go of the grip, he is going to take them. And the enemy comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. That's what the word says. And he is going to entice them that he knows what's best for them. And he's going to lead them down a road that's going to lead to stealing their life away till it kills them or kills the youth in her or cause that light of youthfulness to lead their life, or he's going to destroy who they think they are. And if we don't actually reach out and cover them and speak to them, we're going to lose our young people at an alarming rate. And we've already seen it. We've already seen some of the things that are happening when we hear about young people taking their lives, when we hear about young people going in schools and shooting things up and things like that. How many people, how many adults, how many folks noticed that this kid was appearing to be a troubled kid, but then we wrote him off or passed him along or didn't want to deal with it because he had difficult parents or whatever, or we noticed something seemed off or something seemed different, but we didn't speak to them. So I just wanted to get on here and talk about that. I would love to, I'm hoping to dive more into this and tell you about some encounters and stuff that I've had with some youth in my life and stuff as I became an adult, and even some of my young adult challenging years. My parents forgive me and stuff, the things that, I put you through when I was going through my difficult years. But I just wanted to encourage parents who right now are in that phase in that life where your child is going through a difficult phase, and just not to give up and to not be so hard on them to the point where you're destroying and tearing down the relationship with your child to the point where it's going to take a long time to repair it. The most important thing that you can do today is try to establish a level of trust between you and your child, because we want our children to earn our trust. We always teach them that, do this, trust, and I'll trust you and things like that. But your children also want you to earn theirs. Because in order for them to actually come to you and talk to you, they got to trust you to the point that if they share things with you that are difficult for you to receive, and to understand that you are not going to tear their head off, that you are not going to throw them away, that you're not going to degrade them. You're not going to judge them. You're not going to look at them, but you're going to open your heart of compassion and speak to them and begin to minister to them and begin to wrap your arms around them and begin to help them, allow them a safe place to share what they're struggling with, because trust is two-way. So, I just wanted to get on here and share that, and I don't have a scripture to really just pounce out on you, but I do know, like I said, that the Word of God does tells us in Proverbs 22:6 that train up a child in the way that should go, and when they're old, they will not depart from it. And that is just understanding that we have to continue to train our children up and not be so quick to throw them away. And not even just, maybe you're not doing it to your own children, but other youth you encounter. You can train up another child too. You can mentor and be something of an influence to another youth out there that actually is struggling. Maybe they don't have parents out there. Maybe they don't have people in their life speaking in their life, but don't let the fact that their bark be louder than their bite. Don't let the fact that they are trying to push you away cause you to actually turn a blind eye to what they're struggling with, because we need to be able to reach and restore and grab and hold on to our youth and raise them up to be that generation that God would have them to be, that actually could stand up against the enemy. I know there's a lot of revivals, a lot of things happening on college campuses, and I'm excited, and I'll just applaud what God is doing on a lot of these college campuses, but we have a lot more youth out there we got to reach, and I just want to just share this with you guys. And I hope that this reached some people to think about, like I said, don't be afraid to say something. Don't be afraid to say something, because you never know the life that you will save just because you said something. So I hope this episode, I hope this time we had together actually has made an impact. And just remember that as we gather again for another episode, just always remember this: it only takes a moment to make an impact. And this has been your moment of impact.